there is no law in Kenya today that is discriminating against farmer-managed seed systems, or that is discriminating against farmers, or that is prohibiting farmers from selling, exchanging, or sharing their seeds. There is no such law. Cap 326 does not do that. Unless there is another law, it does not do that. There is no farmer who has ever been arrested for exchanging seed. If we leave this studio now, Sahi, we go to the biggest food markets in Nairobi, you will find farmers selling seed. And it will be labeled. The same hii ni mbegu, hii ni managu ya mbegu, hii unataka mbegu enda ndio hii. If we go to Kisii, we will find them. I know when you are farming now, you are buying seed. You also buy seed from farmers, and you also sell seed. Has anyone ever arrested you? This case is dead on arrival. It is based on emotion and innuendo. There's nothing factual about it. What is out there in the public is really bogus information, to say the least. The people that are presenting this topic are incompetent to discuss it. So the questions that civil society and farmers, genuine farmers, these farmers who are presented, okay, you say how the law has affected you. No, sometimes I am scared. When I exchange seeds, I'm going to be arrested. I told you, I am the one who created the first indigenous seed and food fair event. And I organized it at National Museums of Kenya. And there was government present. And you know what was the most beautiful thing about it? Is that then organizations, especially Pelham, brought farmer groups and they cooked indigenous food at the Museum of Kenya. And they displayed and sold indigenous seeds at the National Museum of Kenya, here in Nairobi. The problem that we have in this movement of organic agroecology, we have people who like to talk too much and they do very little. And they like to complain as if they don't know how the system works. One of the things I was opposing when they were talking about privatizing Kenya seed, I was opposed to that because to some extent, even commercial seed are a public good. And that is why I would vouch every day for Kenya seed to continue to remain owned by the government of Kenya, because in the event of unstable conditions in the market, Kenya seed can still supply seed to farmers at a subsidized cost. And this is what they do. Do you know how much a packet of 2 kg from Kenya seed is? It is 300 shillings last season. Now, if you go to other companies, it is 3 times the price. This is what I'm saying. It is common sense.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Organic Guy podcast. This is your home of organic conversations. I'm your host, the Organic Guy. And right around here, we have conversations on how we can make our food systems work for us rather than against us. Today, I want us to focus on a very important topic, and I think it's really underrated and it's not talked about enough. And that's the topic of seeds. Given that we are looking forward to the ruling that's happening later this year on the issue of seeds, especially on the law that was passed in Kenya, trying to regulate the formal seed sector. What's happening and what is the context and what can we learn? Are there other areas that we can learn from, or what can be improved upon? So today's guest will help us really unpack that area of seeds. And he goes by the name of Emmanuel Atamba. He is really a huge voice, especially in the area of sustainable agriculture and farming. So for me, it's a pleasure to have him on the podcast. Atamba, welcome to the podcast.
Santa sana. Thank you very much for having me. And congratulations on very nice podcast and very nice conversation so far.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think the first time we started interacting with you was probably on social media, if I remember correctly, the early times of Twitter. And I miss the old Twitter in the case that it used to recommend you like people who you have similar interests. And I remember during that time you were tweeting about sustainable farming, agroecology, and I was also in that space. So from that area, we actually got to interact, and the sustainable farming world is small. So we are eventually bound to meet each other. So it goes to show like things that can start small, they can go a long way to bring people together. So that's very, very interesting and appreciative. For guys who don't know you, give them a bit of context. Like, who is Emmanuel Atamba? Like, where did you grow up? Who are you as a young child? Like, were you more of an extrovert, introvert? So what was happening in that space?
I think by the time I was growing up, these definitions were not there. So there was no extroverts and introverts. It was basically everyone was forced to be an extrovert, I think, to some level. But I'm trained in agriculture, majored in agriculture economics. and I pursue some other interests, academic interest in development studies, a lot of interest in development theory, trying to learn, how the world is designed by, very basic understanding of development that sometimes is actually a misunderstanding of development, but this is a topic for another day. I actually recently went back to uni. I enrolled for Bachelor of Laws so that I can really try to, address some of the issues that we are talking about in terms of food system transformation that require very proper, interventions in terms of either litigation or also dealing with the legal frameworks that are there. So as a child, I would say, I was active. I was raised in a farm myself, which gave me a lot of opportunity and experience. Actually, most of the things that I do and I talk about when I talk about farming and when I talk about practices are things I've never been taught anywhere else other than the farm, which I call my home. So how I got a lot of interest into agriculture, I think I like to say I was cast into agriculture by my late father, which was a very good thing. So it's a very good curse that he left on me. So I used to be very funny, like with, as a kid. So one time my dad had gone out to make a call and I cracked a joke in the house and he came back and everyone was laughing. And he said, okay, what are you guys laughing about? And they say, ask him what he said. And I say, I can't repeat it. And my father was a teacher par excellence. Like he was really and he was a professor of anthropology and literature and anthropology at Masinde Muliro University. So he said, and he really liked teaching as a career. Teaching is a noble career. And my family is a family of teachers. Almost everyone in my family is a teacher. Except very few people, and few I mean like 10%. Okay, I don't want to give numbers. And then so when I said when he asked me, can you repeat what you said? I said I can't repeat it. And he said, okay, so if you can't repeat it, you can't be a teacher. Maybe you'll just be a farmer. And then my rebellion started from there. So I always said I'm not a teacher, I'm a farmer. So this is what cultivated in me. So I started doing projects at home, and I had a small garden which was specifically demarcated for me, and I would plant vegetables, and we would have a fight with my mom if she wants to take vegetables from that plot without paying me something small to go and get sweets. So this is my background. I went to high school. I also started agriculture projects in high school. I used to run a rabbit project in high school. I used to take care of pigs. I used to milk cows sometimes when I was in high school. So you go to the kitchen, you take the waste from the kitchen, you give to the pigs. Sometimes the farm manager is called Zadok. He was a very good friend of mine. Sometimes he's not coming tomorrow very early. Maybe he has something. He tells me, please milk the cows in the morning for me. So I would milk the cows, take the milk to the kitchen. And in a boys' school, you don't take tea with milk. So you take black tea, or you just give in hot water and porridge or porridge. And then because I was milking the cows, I will get a cup of the teacher's tea. So I had a very interesting interaction with agriculture, even in school, that a lot of my classmates, were, always saying, this guy with agriculture. But I did not know, because I told you I come from a family of teachers, I did not know that you could actually study agriculture at university until I finished high school. When I finished high school and when I was applying for courses, when I saw Bachelor of Science Agriculture, I did not look for any other course, and I went in to study agriculture. And this is a bit of the background. So I really started very early managing agriculture projects, processes, and all that. I think when I was 12, for example, I was my uncle gave me some money to manage a small farm somewhere, and I was able to manage from planting to harvesting. In fact, what I did, I took the money for fertilizer, I bought a small phone, and then I borrowed manure from a neighbor and put on that farm. The guy has never harvested the kind of maize he harvested that time. So, I have grown up knowing agriculture and farming to be a very noble profession, to be a very rewarding profession, even though sometimes I'm still not seeing the money from the actual farming, which is a bit of something I need to work on. Like I have to really scale most of the enterprises I have on my farm. But I think other than that, it is one of the most refreshing things, because also the practice now really helps me to really place myself in the policy conversations because I think it's very difficult to talk about policies without understanding the practice and the science about it.
Yeah, it's a really, really good background. And it's interesting to see like across, at least people I've talked to in this podcast, their background is very similar in some way or shape or form. They were either involved in agriculture like in very early age. So it's sort of like they may not have like wanted to be a farmer, but it's like on the background, it's something they used to do. Yeah. Either like they were given a farm or they were being told, hey, go help us in weeding at the farm or come assist us in harvesting. So it's always a really interesting thing or theme that I've started to notice like around all people who are involved in agriculture as well. Since today we are talking about seeds, so I would like to know like what is your earliest memory of seeds? Because as you say, like I grew up in the rural part of Kenya, in Kisii, so I was heavily involved in farming. Like I was told, hey, it's time to harvest, let's go help us harvest, or when you know chunga hizi ng'ombe. So I was in that environment. So for us, like every harvest time, our grandmother used to like pick like the seeds that look a little bit better, especially for maize. Then they wanaiweka juu ya like nyumba, kulikuwa na nyumba hizi za nyasi, so they put it there for like next season. So for you, like what is the earliest memory you can remember of your interaction with seeds?
I would say even from primary school, for example, like I used to be, and I'm still fascinated about seeds in terms of how you can put something small on the ground and it just multiplies. And one of my favorite crops, for example, is bananas. I really love bananas. You know, you take a cutting, a sucker of a banana, you plant it somewhere, and then it just colonizes the whole place. And every time you get bananas, and you know, so like I would, for example, you know, like when these guys were selling sugarcane along the road in the village. These days it's not very common, but Kitambo, this was the thing. Like if you get 5 shillings sugarcane, you know, this was what you would go and buy as a rural child. So there was a lot of sugarcane vendors, let me call them like this, in the village and in the main markets. So when they sell, the top part remains and they throw it. They just leave it there. So I would always want to carry, like sometimes I find the purple one and I want to carry it. I go home, I try to propagate it. Sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not. Avocado seeds was also a big thing for me. Like I would never leave an avocado seed on the road. I would pick it, I would go and try to plant it. Some of these things, if I think back of my home, some of the trees that are there are actually trees that we planted as children. Through this, at some point I was also like interested in, I really love this tree called Gravelia robusta. So like, trying to see, okay, so how can I get a seedling of Gravelia? So I would climb, I would get these seeds, I would try to, propagate today like this. If it doesn't work, I try a different option and all that. And then in the end, you get like 20 seedlings of Gravelia, and then you plant on your farm. And up to now, you can see some of those trees. They're there. So I think I'm someone who really, from as a child, really understands the importance of seed. But at the same time, like when I think about the farming that we used to do, especially for maize, for example, different from you, where you would say that you would pick the best. I grew up knowing hybrid 614 as the seed that you need to use, and I respect that seed to date. So when you talk to me about because I come from the North Rift, so from the time I started getting into the farm to plant, to weed and all that, I always knew it is hybrid 614, and then at some point there was hybrid 6213, and then there's a hybrid 613 or something. Then later, this is, so my interaction with seed is two-way. There is the seeds you get, pumpkin seeds, for example. When you are eating pumpkins at home, I would be the person to dry the seeds, make sure that, we can have seed to, plant again and things like this. But I also interacted a lot with, especially on the commercial side, the maize seed. This was, I always remember as a child that maize, when you want to plant maize, you plant hybrid 614. So this is the two sides of the world that I come from a bit when it comes to seeds. So the commercial, and then also the, everyone has access and all these things like the indigenous, seeds for vegetables and all these.
It's a really interesting perspective, and it goes to show like the diversity of like experiences we have in the country. I don't know if it's because in Kisii, like that was the practice, I think, in the early 90s. And then as we get into the 2000s, that's when I remember even my grandmother used now to go to the place where they sell the seeds. And then that's when she could go and buy like hybrid seeds. So for a long time, I think like my entire primary school, it was like, hey, these are the seeds we're using. And then I think when I went into high school, that's when she started like going into buying like hybrid. So that's a really interesting development. For you then, what is your understanding? So because now we have a world where there's an introduction of hybrids, and you can argue like even before that people used to do hybrid seeds. What is your understanding of how did people, especially like indigenous people like in Kenya, used to interact with seeds before even hybrids came into existence?
I mean, I would say broadly, from my understanding of how our human interaction, let me just broaden it even beyond Kenya with agriculture has been, is that, like we started from hunting and gathering, and then we started to cultivate, and then we started to select. So the human being has, of course, a lot of people are now talking about, quantum computing and all that, and how you can get other dimensions and into the world, other perspectives. We are limited to 3D. This is the most we can see, So human beings are rational, farmers are rational, even indigenous people are rational. This is if I said anything else, it will be an indictment to them. My assumption first is that every human being is rational. Some animals can also be rational, like cats, or it depends a bit, but all human beings are rational to begin with. And rational with the limitation of the perspective that they have about things. So if you think about the crops that we consume today, these crops have been selected over time by people. Even before people started breeding in university and people started to do genetically modified crops, this selection has been done by us as human beings, as a species. And we have selected from the beginning of time what we thought was more productive, what we thought was more resilient, what we thought was more colorful, and what we thought was more nutritious to us at that time. Okay, so I think for me it's a continuous process that we have been doing by just selecting. So even if like the example you are giving about your grandmother and how she would select seeds, I'm sure she would be selecting based on cob size to begin with. So cob size is indicator number one. Okay, cob size might not mean that is the most resilient crop. Maybe if there is a disease that will come later in after 10 years of selecting based on cob size, then there are certain characteristics that you are leaving behind. Yeah. So this is the point. So I think the loss happens because of that continuous selection that is limited in the sense of this is what I see and this is what I want. I don't care about what I see because I don't even know what I don't see. So I think this is what I can say about it. So it's a continuous process. I don't think what we are doing now is different from what, even the very, very first versions of Homo sapiens, or even if we went back to the other species that we were before, I don't think it's anything different. It's only that maybe that now we are just writing it on paper to say, so we selected this maize because it was 15 centimeters. The cob size was 15 centimeters. But our grandparents would still select. They would just not maybe measure the cob size as scientists at university would do. They would not measure. They would not bother to go to the field and measure the height of the stem. Okay, but they would still select based on those attributes.
Yeah, it's that's true. It's a common theme, I think. Depending on the technology of that time, that's what they used to use to select the best seeds that they can get. I think as we go into the conversation, there are a few words we're going to repeat a lot. So one of them, I think it's indigenous seeds, it's hybrids, and I think we'll mention about GMOs. So you can give guys a little bit of context, like what is the difference between those three seeds?
First, indigenous seeds is highly contested concept, because indigenous to who? And indigenous, how does it become an indigenous seed? Something that is indigenous is something, I mean, if we really go back to the science, something that is indigenous is something that originates from that context, from that location. Most of the things that, for example, if you say maize, for example, it is not indigenous to Kenya. It came to Kenya. I think it's indigenous to Mexico or elsewhere. Therefore, there is normally what you would call land races. Okay, so land races, these are seeds, or these are not only seeds, because also it's not only about seed, but generally, forms of life, you can broaden it like that, that originated from elsewhere, but have been used for a very long time and adapted to our context. So, for example, the different types of maize that we call indigenous would really fall, if we are strict about the English that we are using, will be land races, not indigenous. But of course, we call them indigenous because, we found them there and, we want to believe that they are ours and things like this. But that said, what is broadly understood as indigenous, and what I would also, with that caveat of it is not super clear, what I would also want to associate myself with is that these are seeds that have not been bred for any specific characteristics. Okay, so they exist more or less naturally, mostly openly pollinated. So there is not a lot of interference in terms of choosing this and this to cross pollinate or something. So this is what people would refer to as indigenous. But I've said put a caveat on it. It's really not exactly like that technically. When you go to hybrids, a hybrid is basically a combination of two or more characteristics into something that is stable, that shows both characteristics. So you have a tall maize variety that has very weak roots, okay, and you have a short maize variety that has very strong roots. Then you breed with the target of hoping that the strong roots of the short variety will somehow combine with the tall maize variety and all that. So you are looking for these specific characteristics, but it is naturally done. If it is impossible for these combinations to happen, it's impossible. You can't force it. So you can say, I like this bean because it's very nice. It produces a lot of seed, okay, but it also produces a lot of gas. But this other one that does not have a lot of gas does not produce a lot of seed. So I want to cross them, in a way that, in a systematic manner, in a way that they will have both characteristics. It's a very complicated process to come up with a hybrid. So I hear a lot of people saying, hybrids are farmer seeds that have been labeled as hybrids. No. Hybrids are unique products in the end, in the sense that they carry a very unique combination of genetics from both parents of the seed. And the process of developing a hybrid takes many years. So, and then now when you come to genetically modified organisms, is where you are transferring, genes from another species and introducing, mostly to plants. Okay, so for example, BT maize, they take the genes from Bacillus thuringiensis, which is a naturally occurring bacteria in the soil that produces a toxin that kills pests, especially from the Lepidoptera species. So you go to the BT genome, you steal the gene there that is responsible for production of the toxin, and then you introduce that gene to another species, which is now maize, and then the maize now has the ability to produce the toxin that would have otherwise been produced by the bacteria. Now you want it to be produced by the maize. So that the dudu, ikikula hiyo mahindi, it's gone. We give a lot of credit to GMOs. I don't find it to be super interesting. Why? Because GMOs in the end only achieve, the people who are doing GMOs, I studied biotechnology at university, by the way, so I know a lot more about the details. But the move now is to go to gene editing, because transferring genes from another species to a different species is super expensive. So the move now is to move to gene editing, where people are saying, okay, so if this gene is what makes this crop to behave the way we don't want, then we are just going to open it up at molecular level, by the way. So it's very detailed. We are going to open it up and we are going to cut out the gene that is undesirable. Which is, some people are saying this is not that bad, So who wants to eat pineapples with the bitterness that they have? So if you can remove the bitterness from pineapples, that comes after eating, especially. If you eat pineapples and you take water immediately, then you realize you have not eaten something that is very sweet. So if you can remove it, we have no problem. Then people say, yeah, it's fine. But in the end, it's a super expensive process. It's super complicated. It comes with a lot of controls because of the cost that it has. So yeah, so this is where I would leave it. But I think the place where I like to operate myself when it comes to seeds, I have boundaries. So I am between hybrids and indigenous seeds. So I don't go beyond that because I don't think it is even necessary. We can leave this to other generations to try.
Yeah. I think it's a really good definition. At least it gives the viewers a little bit of context of what we'll be talking about. It's interesting to say that hybrids. I think this is a confusion a lot of people have between hybrids and GMOs. They say like, hey, this is the same process. Yeah, but when I think as you've explained, it's very different. Hybrids, it's between same species, right? You do not go intra-species boundaries, but for a GMO, you actually go beyond the species themselves, and then now you're introducing new genes.
Just to clarify, most GMOs are hybrids to begin with. Because, for example, for BT maize, if you want to make the maize to be resistant to pests, why would you make a variety of maize that is not high yielding to be resistant to pests? For what? You see, this one, watachoma. So now you realize that most, because there are two main characteristics for genetically modified foods across the world. One is pest resistance. So the BT, for example, because it's BT cotton, there's BT maize, there's a lot of variations of BT, okay? Then the other one is herbicide tolerance. So these are the two main technologies of genetic modification that are there. So it's not as comprehensive as people like to make it. It's not as flowery as they like to present it. So therefore, genetic modification cannot work minus the breeding, the kawaida breeding that leads us to hybrids. So this is where maybe the confusion comes in. But hybrids are not GMOs. GMOs can be hybrids, but hybrids are not necessarily GMOs.
Yeah, I think that's a very important distinction moving forward. So I think we mentioned there a different of context. So you mentioned that you grew up in an era where like your parents could go like into a shop and then get hybrids. So in my case, it was different because not up until like in the early 2000s, that's when my grandmother would actually go into the shop and actually get these hybrids. So given in that context, and we know that during colonization, the British were very intent in actually establishing this kind of hybrids, especially for maize, for coffee to some extent, right? So these are like these were cash crops for them to export into their countries, especially in Britain. So given that context, do you think that the fact that the British, right, the colonialists came in Kenya and introduced hybrids has in any way changed the minds of farmers, especially from your area? So it has given them this mindset of, if you want to produce, you have to use our technology, or not necessarily their technology, but you have to use hybrids for you to be able to be a successful farmer.
I would not credit colonizers with that kind of... that is giving them too much credit.
No, at least they systemized the system. Like they came with the system and they were able to establish that system.
The process of selecting what we like, as I told you, this is one of the biggest weaknesses that we have as human beings. And it's everywhere in life, even in dating. People say, yeah, I like this guy, this girl, she keeps her hair very nice and all that. You are selecting what you like. You're not selecting what you need. So human beings don't select what they need. When people select jobs, when they select cars, when they select houses and all this, they select what they want. And that's why we end up with, people living in 5-bedroom houses with 2 children, and they have to split the bedrooms, and it's never enough people in the house because we go for what we want. So I would say whether colonization happened or even if it did not happen, okay? For example, if you go to Ethiopia, Ethiopia was not colonized. They kicked out the Italians very fast. They were not able to colonize them. But they still have hybrids and all that. So at the end of the day, at some point, human beings, as impatient as we are, and as we are always going to be, we were going to try to speed up the process of selecting. It was going to be too boring to wait, okay, so we are going to harvest this, and then we are going to wait, and then we will select again. Human beings, they were curious. They say, okay, so I saw this maize in Kisii. I've seen this maize type in Migori. I like this characteristic in the one in Migori. I like this one, the one in Kisii. I'm going to plant them together so that they cross-pollinate, and therefore I end up, and this is a very layman way of explaining breeding. Breeding is more detailed than this. Then I will end up with a variety that has both sides. This is what we do with chicken. You see the kind of transactions that happen with chicken in the village. This was not brought by the British. It's basic human understanding to say, I have good hens, but what I'm missing ni jogoo. Sasa, I'm going to find a nice jogoo from my neighbor that I'm going to borrow. I'm not even going to buy it. I'm going to borrow it for 1 week so that when it mates with my hens, I am going to end up with chicks that look both like my hens and like my jogoo. But if I liked my neighbor's hens, I would have gone for chicks from there so that it has both. But I like my hens. But now I want the jogoo to upgrade So I would be hesitant to say this was introduced by the British. Let's first look at this as a development of all humanity. The interest was in enhancing production, enhancing productivity, enhancing consistency. Hybrids play a very important role in the sense of generally trying to combine, the different characteristics of what we want. Otherwise, I would not see. I mean, I like this. Some of these land races of maize, in Western they call it gibendi. They look good. You can roast, but if you want to produce maize for ugali, you don't go for that. You go for and they are our seeds. Kenya Seed Company is owned by the government of Kenya. It's a majority shareholder. I know recently some people, I don't want to mention, tried to sell it. But as at the moment, you should know that Kenya Seed is our company as Kenyans. Simlo Seed is a subsidiary of Kenya Seed. It's our company. And a few other companies that are subsidiaries of Kenya Seed are our companies. So when I talk about hybrid 614, for example, as a variety of maize that I like to work with, if I'm going to grow maize, chances are very high I'm going to go for hybrid 614 or hybrid 6213. These are varieties from a company that is a Kenyan company, for example. So I would not credit it to anyone else. But the problem that is there is if I present to you a high-yielding variety of maize, I am not telling you to throw what you had. It is you who will make the rational decision of saying, the first time farmers plant these different seeds, wanapandangi shamba yote, they plant a small part kidogo. And then they'll plant half an acre, they'll see how it works. And then the other half, they keep their own seeds. And then eventually, if you find this farmer has decided to use commercial seeds on the entire piece of the land, it's because this is what is making them money, or this is what is giving them food. They are not going to do it because they are happy with seed companies. They are not going to do it because they want seed companies to be richer. They are going to do it because it works for them.
So if a breeder decided today, and in most cases they don't involve the farmer, right? So it's a breeder who decides, who goes into the lab and says, you know what, I think a farmer might like what I'm about to do. So how can I saw this maize in, let's say in Ukambani, it's very adapted to drought, and I want to like high yielding maize in Kitale. So I'm going to breed them, and then I'm going to breed like a maize that is highly tolerant to drought, and then it's high yielding. So the farmer is not necessarily involved, right? In most cases, and most of the products that that are in the market don't necessarily go through that process. So that's fair. I want us to then talk to, I think, a topic that is in most people's mind, especially when it comes to seeds, and that is the Seed and Crop Varieties Act. I think it's CAP 326, right? It's something that is in court, right? We have a lot of farmers who went to court, with support of NGOs to try and petition the government to say, hey, I think this law is very discriminatory and it's not working for our small scale farmers and our indigenous farmers. So before we get into the content of the law itself, what is your understanding of the Seed and Crop Varieties Act?
And before I go to that, I would say, because I've interacted with a lot of breeders, and I know some of them will watch this show and they will be very disappointed if I don't actually dispute what you're saying, that farmers are not involved in the process of breeding. There is a lot of consultation that happens to produce varieties. At that point, it's a product that you're producing for the market, and your market is farmers. You have to produce something that works for farmers. So farmers are part and parcel of the process of the breeding that is happening. And again, not necessarily in the laboratory. I mean, the lab work, I think, mainly for if you want to do GMOs, but the breeding is done in the field, And as much as people can do a bit of genotyping to just look at, if you want to define exactly in terms of molecular analysis what characteristics are contained in this seed, you can do genotyping. But the general breeding that is done outside, is done in a natural process. It's a highly natural process. And this is why it would disintegrate. And that, there's a lot of people who say, if you plant hybrids, you don't harvest. They cannot germinate. This is a lie. Hybrids will germinate. If I take hybrid 614 by Kenya Seed today, I go and plant on my farm, I can take the same seed and plant, and I will still get maize. The only thing that will happen is that you remember it's a hybrid, it's a combination. Sawa? Yeah, so it's a combination. I wanted to use an example that you can relate with, but let me not go into that. It's a combination of genes. So what happens is, if it openly again pollinates, what happens is it will disintegrate back into the genes. And that's why you will see in a family of a tall mother and a tall father, there will be short children. They are not from the neighbor. Yeah. This is because there were genes that were contained in either of the parents, that now, with the chances that are there in terms of the crossing, then they can reemerge. So no, what they call F1 is really also within the breeding space, is the very first it's a higher value of a hybrid. That's what I can say. But it's you would mostly see it in insect pollinated crops. There's no F1 for maize. Maize is not insect pollinated. I don't want to go into a lot of technical jargon, but the flower structures of the reproductive structures of maize is different from tomatoes, for example. So the possibilities that you find in tomatoes when you're breeding tomatoes, and the technicalities of breeding for tomatoes, is completely different from the technicalities of breeding from maize. So when someone ends up with an F1 tomato, you might even find that it's a combination of 4 different traits into one tomato plant, and that's why they sell it per seed. Especially if you buy the seedlings, they sell it per seed. Yeah. One seedling, they'll give you at 50 shillings sometimes if you go to proper seedling, because of the costs. Now, let me come to the law. In my transparent view, I think this case in Machakos is misplaced. The case is misplaced by the simple fact that there is no law in Kenya today that is discriminating against farmer-managed seed systems, or that is discriminating against farmers, or that is prohibiting farmers from selling, exchanging, or sharing their seeds. There is no such law. CAP 326 does not do that, unless there is another law. It does not do that. I have read several times, because I've had this debate several times with a lot of my friends, them in the space, who are talking about it. They have never shown me where. So they go to the definition of terms in the law, and someone defines, they say, the definition of terms, selling includes barter. So what does it mean? Is barter limited to farmers? You see, sometimes it's our understanding of things is limiting our ability to communicate. Because if you want to say barter, the reason that the fact that barter is mentioned under the definition of sell in the law means that barter trade is not possible is also prohibited, then one, you have a very limited thinking of what farmers are able to do. Number two, you have a very limited thinking of where barter operates and where it does not. I give people a good example of Elon Musk. Elon Musk bought Twitter not by paying cash for it. He exchanged shares from his other companies with the same value of the value that Twitter was being sold at. And then he got Twitter. He did not pay cash. He did not pay dollars. He did not take cash money to them. He did not do a check to them. He did not do an RTGS, whatever. He transferred shares. Is that not barter? That is barter. So when the drafters of the law were thinking about the law and they realized that, if the definition of sell is limiting, then what can happen is we can agree with you. You deliver to me seeds worth 5 million shillings. And then, ukikuja na hiyo mbegu worth 5 million shillings, you drive back my lorry worth 5 million shillings, then you can go and sell the lorry. And in the law, we can say we have not sold seeds. We have not exchanged seeds. Okay? Because there was no exchange. And this is why barter is explicitly defined there. So there is no any other part of the law that has been mentioned, unless you know, that says specifically that farmers cannot exchange seeds. Number two, the Constitution of Kenya is more supreme than any other law. In fact, if we go to court debating whether the constitutional provision is more superior than the provisions of Chapter 326, which is the Seed and Plant Varieties Act, the court has very limited response. The court will have to go with the provision in the Constitution if the constitutional provision contradicts with the law. This applies also to county laws. The Constitution of Kenya, Article 11.3, talks about culture and heritage as part of the state. And it clearly provides, Article 11.3b, it clearly instructs Parliament to develop legislation, okay, that recognizes the rights of farmers. That is a constitutional provision. This Cap 326 is not a new law. It was passed in 1972. I think you were also not born. I was not there. We were not there. It's not our fault. It was in effect from 1972. It has been updated several times. Most of the parts that have been updated in that law up to until 2015 were focusing on penalties. The last update before 2015 update was 2012, which increased the penalty of contravening the law to 1 million. Do you know how much it was before? It was 50,000 shillings, and it was set around 2004. The penalty was set at 50,000. You know what it means? It means is, if I am a farmer who loves planting hybrid 614, and I go to my favorite agrovet in Eldoret, and they sell me hybrid 614 for, let's say, 50 acres, forget about the cost of the seed, hata kama wangenipea free, for 50 acres. Can you imagine a farmer who is going into producing maize, 50 acres of maize? And then someone sells them counterfeit seed. How much losses that is? You are a farmer yourself. You can just imagine how much losses that is. Forget about the 50-acre farmer, because you can say, that's a rich farmer, anaweza uza 1 acre na akule hiyo mwaka. Think about the 1-acre farmer, the 2-acre farmer who has nothing else. They don't have a podcast. They don't get consultancy contracts. They don't get good jobs. They don't have businesses in town. They are relying on the seed they put in the soil to feed themselves, to feed their families, sometimes to pay school fees for their children. And then someone sells them fake seed. And then the penalty they get is 50,000. Is it prohibitive enough? No. This is why the amendment was made in 2012 to increase the penalty from 50,000 to 1 million. And I've looked at all the amendments since 1972. Most of the time amendments are done, they increase the penalty in relation to the state of the economy, so that it is prohibitive enough. Come on, 50,000, I can also get into business of selling fake seed.
Yeah, I mean, I see your angle, but the fact that the law doesn't explicitly mention small-scale farmers, I think that's the first problem. The fact that the law says, hey, as a farmer who is growing hybrids, you actually shielded from, let's say, being sold fake seeds, right? So if someone sells you fake seeds, they will get this kind of penalty, and that's written in law. The problem with that is that they explicitly do not mention indigenous seeds. So the fact that the law doesn't do that, it leaves the enforcer to interpret the law in whichever way they want. It's more of shielding hybrids than actually shielding the indigenous seeds. And that's where the problem is, because if you don't do that explicitly in the law, then it gives the enforcer of the law to do whatever they want. And that's where I think the main problem is with this particular law.
You know, what is important is to understand the law in totality. This is why I told you I've gone back to study law, because I find it fascinating that as much as sometimes we tell ourselves we understand the law, we do not. You know, when people say the law is clear, or as you are saying the law is unclear, the question of what is clear and what is unclear is never answered. And even with lawyers, you see when they are debating, I think my favorite is when they were debating about Chebukati and the elections, and they were saying, you know, so there's one lawyer, they have gone to the same university, taught by the same professors. One is saying the IBC chair can announce the results, and the other one is saying it is the commission to announce that, and they are both lawyers, and they are reading the same law. So I think understanding the law in totality, and the only people who can define this thing is not even lawyers. The only people who can shed light on this topic is proper agriculture experts who understand this topic. Lawyers will confuse all these things. I've talked about the constitutional provision and the instruction, explicit instruction to Parliament to develop legal framework that recognizes farmers as the owners of seed.
I think that's where the problem is, because there's no such a law.
There is. Now, the law is the 2015 amendment of the Seed and Plant Varieties Act. If you read it, in fact, the memorandum, this was pushed by Aden Duale. He was then the leader of majority. Because remember, after the 2010 constitution, Parliament was in a process of revising all the legal frameworks to align with the constitution. Because it is an illegality to have a law that contradicts the mother law. And 2015, an amendment was passed in Parliament. It's what some people refer to the 2016 amendment, but it's actually written 2015 amendment, which explicitly refers to the constitutional provision under Article 11. The memorandum, if you read the memorandum, it refers to the constitutional provision. And the purpose of that amendment was solely to implement the constitutional recognition of farmers as the owners of seeds. How did it do it? The 2015 amendment brought on board the institution called Genetic Research and Resources Institute, GERI. Whoever is the director of GERI has failed the indigenous seed subsector, because this is the person that has been given the mandate by law, by the 2015 amendment of the Seed and Plant Varieties Act. So the current Seed and Plant Varieties Act actually provides for an institution called GERI, okay? It's hosted by Calro at the moment. So some people also will want to debate and say, but it is not independent. How do you create an institution from the air? You have to host it somewhere so that it grows. If the people who are running GERI have not been able to run it, they should quit. That is the simple definition. Yeah, they should quit. Whoever is the director of GERI has been given an opportunity for the last 10 years to really develop this space of indigenous seeds and even seed banks. You know, it even provides for them to create a mechanism for farmers to be able to save their seeds and exchange their seeds. This is the law that I'm reading, I'm talking about. So it is not that it is not there. People are ignoring, and I think people decide to be ignorant sometimes and say, we don't want to read the 2016 amendment. We do not want to read the fact that, if I ask you, Brian, the fact that now the law strives to even get to a point of establishing a legal institution for the management and access sharing of indigenous seed. Is that not progressive? Is that not recognizing? The law you cannot write a statement in the law to say, ati tukue na clause kwa sheria inasema, now farmers can do what they want with the seed. No, the law does not allow you to do what you want. You are allowed to do what you want. It is you to align with the law. Okay? Today, there is no farmer who has ever been arrested for exchanging seed. If we leave this studio now, sahi, we go to the biggest food markets in Nairobi, you will find farmers selling seed. Seed. Then it will be labeled. Nasema hii ni mbegu, hii ni managu ya mbegu, hii unataka mbegu enda ndio hii. If we go to Kisii, we will find them. I know when you are farming now, you are buying seed, you also buy seed from farmers, and you also sell seed. Has anyone ever arrested you? No.
That is something we have to avoid. We can't just sit and say, because it hasn't happened, it will never happen.
And this is not what I'm proposing. What I'm saying is the law has already been amended to the extent possible to provide for recognition, and not only recognition, but provide institutional support for farmer-managed seed system. That's why I'm saying my blame lies squarely on whoever, because the law says there will be a director of the institution. Whoever is the director of Gary should come forward and explain what they have done with that institution for the last 10 years. Because it is that institution that can come and say, let us bring these civil society actors who are saying they really care about this seed issue. Okay? I've been in that space before, I know, and I'm still talking about farmers' rights and all that. I'm not saying this because I don't care about farmers' rights. I know what I'm giving is very practical information, that it is that person to come and tell us. The 2015 amendment provided for not only recognition, but institutional mechanism for managing indigenous farmer-managed seed systems. You cannot manage indigenous farmer-managed seed systems the same way with the commercial seed sector. The law that is there, as before 2015, the law that was there basically was managing the commercial seed sector. Why? Because of livelihood issues, because of plant health protection, and this is why KEFIS exists. You know, someone can do something. Mtu anaweza kutoa mbegu ya, you know, now we have a weed called ipomea in Kajiado and other places. If you go and buy their grass seeds, you take them to Kisii, what will you have done? You will have transferred the ipomea, which is a big menace in Kajiado, to Kisii, if it can grow there. But I know it likes the dry areas. So there has to be a law. When you're talking about supporting indigenous, organic, agroecological food systems, it does not mean that you don't need laws. Laws are needed. And a typical Kenyan farmer, I will challenge you to tell me, if you have ever met any Kenyan farmer, and a serious farmer by that means, I don't mean TikTok farmers, I mean a serious farmer, who has never bought seed from the shop. And even you as a farmer, tell me if you have never bought seed from the shop. You will always, it's not a sin. You know, when I go to my farm, I can say, for black nightshade, for managu, I don't need to buy the seed from the shop. I can buy from my neighbors. Okay? But for maize, if I want to do 10 acres of maize, my friend, I will buy from Kenya Seed.
I think that's clear. I mean, the whole challenge is not that hybrids should not exist. They should exist. And I think they have been given the leeway. I think it's more because they have the access to the lawmakers and they have the means to the lawmakers. And let's be honest, these lawmakers have no idea of what is involved in the law. This is something that they usually drafted by what they usually call the lobby group, which is very strong, by the way, in the hybrid sector. They go into this lawmaker's office and say, hey, we have this document, we want it passed in parliament, and this is what we'll do. These guys never read these laws that they're passed. They usually have aides in their offices, right? These are the aides usually go through the papers and they go through the law and then they sort of summarize to the lawmakers, and this is exactly what you need to say in parliament to get it passed. That's my understanding of how the process worked. And that's why my only thing that I have against this law is that it's not farmers led, right? And I think this is something very big that the petitioners have, is that the 2010 constitution also provides that the Kenyans should have at least public participation. And this law didn't go through that phase as well. I think the petitioners have a very, very strong case against that as well.
They don't. This case is dead on arrival. It is based on emotion and innuendo. There's nothing factual about it. Any competent court, even to any competent person, any competent person, sitting with all the amendments of the CAP 326 from 1972, all the amendments, I think there was another one in 1998, 1982, it was amended, 1998, it was amended, 2004, it was amended, it came to 2006, I think there was an amendment, and then 2012, and then now 2016 is the latest amendment. Any sane person can see that there is nothing in this law that prohibits farmers from selling, exchanging their seeds. Now, why do I say that also? Now, people go to this definition of terms. What are the things that this law regulates? People need to understand that. This law regulates two things. Number one, plant varieties registration process. That is the first primary objective of this law. Because Kenya is a signatory of UPOV, and you know why plant varieties are registered? Plant varieties are registered so that they can be protected. Plant varieties need to be protected. It's not a problem. If you have done, I mean, even me just passing at bachelor's level, the unit on breeding, just passing, I think I did 2 units. I did breeding and then I did updated, like higher level breeding. Passing those units, my friend, it's not easy. Breeding is not a joke. You know, people cast aspersions. Yeah, you know, these breeders, they just go to farmers, they pick their seeds. So where wenda uchukue hiyo mbegu wenda uregister. You know, even seed companies struggle with this law. Even registering a seed in this country, it's not easy. I have tried registering seeds. It's not easy. You go to the process takes time. And the varieties that are registered are protected for 2 reasons. Number one, so that their utility can be secured. They are kept, even there is a sample that is kept by KEFIS. Number 2, so that the breeders who invested the time to breed these seeds can benefit from the seed, which is very minimal. It's like, it's like publishing books. If you write a book today, how much money do you think you'll make from a book? Very little. The only thing you will need maybe is recognition. If you found someone has removed the cover of your book and now they are reading it without the cover, how will you feel? So we must find a way of understanding this topic from a different direction. That is number one, plant variety registration. And that is why KEFIS keeps a plant variety register. Can I shock you? Out of the list of all registered plant varieties in Kenya, do you know who has the biggest number of varieties registered? Can you guess?
Simlo?
No. And I have told you, by the way, when you hear Simlo seed, that is your company. As a Kenyan, you should be happy. That is your money. When you see a product of Kenya seed, as a farmer, buy that seed. That is your seed. Now, let me show you. The biggest, in terms of number of varieties, is KALRO, number 1. That is Kenya Agricultural Livestock Research Organization. It is us. It is Kenyans who own those varieties. KALRO, universities like Egerton, JKUAT, UN, the private companies that have registered their seed, the number of varieties, and I would challenge you to go to, it's open, but it's public. Go to KEFIS, check the plant varieties list, and anyone who is watching. Just look at the list. See which varieties are registered. These varieties are registered for their protection, not for protection of the breeders, for protection of the variety, so that they are not lost. Okay? If you don't register a variety, you don't. Now, number 2 that is being regulated by this law is the process of certification. Now, a registered variety does not automatically become a certified seed. What is a certified seed? A certified seed is a seed that has been produced under the set conditions by the regulator, which is KEFIS. Now, I have interacted with, I think I would still insist, being a scientist in training also, and I've interacted with a lot of people who do breeding. They check from plowing, site identification. You know, if you want to produce certified seed today for maize, KEFIS will have to check where you're going to produce it, the land. They will have to approve it. You cannot decide, leo napanda mbegu hapa na upande. KEFIS will have to approve the site. Number 2, they will have to approve the land preparation process that you do. Number 3, they will have to approve the planting. Number 4, they will come and check how much fertilizer you have put and all the practices they will check at each and every stage. KEFIS, as the regulator, will check you. Now, there is someone called a seed analyst. The seed analyst anakuja kuangalia vile hiyo process inaenda na pia ukistock, how you store the seed so that you don't store seeds improperly. Then unauzia mkulima mbegu, it has lost the germination potential of it. So a certified seed is not si mbegu ya mtajiri fulani. No, it is seed that has been produced under these conditions, and therefore it can have a quality criteria assigned to it. Then I can say this is hybrid 614, and I can tell you as a farmer, if you plant this seed, you are likely to get, with good conditions, you are likely to get up to 25 bags of maize per acre. I can tell you that because it is measurable. It is, yeah. Number 2, I can tell you for sure, certified seed, if you don't get fake seed, because fake seed is also a big thing. It's a big problem in the market. If you get certified seed, it will be weed free. That is also a guarantee that you get. So huwezi kuchukua mbegu ya managu. Unaona ile mbegu ya managu ya Simlo? If you go and buy the packet ya Simlo, uende kupanda, haiwezi kuwa na weeds, haiwezi mea weeds, ilikuja na hiyo mbegu. But something interesting happened on my farm the other day, just to give you an idea of what happens. So my workers, I allow them to grow vegetables for their own consumption. Because I tell them, sasa usipomata mboga yako ya kukula, mimi sikulangi hiyo mboga hapo. Now this guy went and bought mbegu ya mboga ya kienyeji. I don't remember which vegetable exactly. So mimi siku nyingine nakuja kwa farm, ninaona sorghum. Sorghum imejaa kwa shamba. Sasa jamaa, hey, mse, when did we agree we are going to plant sorghum? And the guy tells me ilikuja na ile mbegu ya alinunua kwa soko. You see the what I'm talking about? Now imagine it is not sorghum. Imagine it is a notorious weed. Just imagine for a second, it was a notorious weed. What happens to the farmer? You have another. So certification is a quality assurance process that is important. So that is the purpose of the law. The Seed and Plant Varieties Act, if you read from the objectives, is to regulate, maintain, it provides mechanisms for maintaining the list of varieties, which Kenya is obligated to maintain. Kenya is a signatory of UPOV, Universal Protection of Varieties. I know there's this thing people like to refer a lot called DUS. That, farmers are not able to register because they cannot follow the DUS process. Of course, you cannot follow the DUS process. You know what the DUS is? It's a rigorous process. I have looked at dossiers that people are going to submit to KEFIS for registration of varieties. It's not easy. It's not a joke. It's pages like this. You can't carry it, my friend. The dossier inaenda kwa KEFIS. What you need to prove in the DUS before you have varieties registered, you have to prove it is distinct from any other variety, either registered or occurring naturally. Na hiyo registration process iko na committee. Kuna KALRO kwa hiyo committee, Ministry of Agriculture kwa hiyo committee, and others, including farmer representative organizations, are in that committee. Farmer representatives are in the committee of plant variety registration. So what I'm trying to say is this issue has been heavily misrepresented, and to a point that what is out there in the public is really bogus information, to say the least. The people that are presenting this topic are incompetent to discuss it. And I can tell you that for sure. If you don't trust Parliament, as you have said, do you trust KEFIS?
They have shown not to be trusted.
Where, my friend? Where? Do you know the only reason why we are not getting notorious weeds from other countries that are disastrous in crop production is because KEFIS exists. Yeah. Do you know KEFIS is keeping check of our borders to make sure that we are not getting entry of disastrous plant material? Do you know that KEFIS is checking borders to make sure that farmers, mbegu ya wakulima wetu, cannot be stolen from this country and be taken to other countries to be utilized without proper rights, without proper benefits being assigned to those farmers? Those are the responsibilities of KEFIS. And
I think the overall point here we are trying to establish is that these institutions are not bad institutions, right? They are doing the work. Yeah, they play a role that they're supposed to play. So I'm trying to summarize what we are trying to get from this law. And what I'm getting from you is that you're saying that this law is a needed law, and it's trying to protect the breeders.
It's not even trying. There is a small section in the law that talks about breeders' rights. And unless you tell me, I know I was taught by someone called Professor Kimani at University of Nairobi. Professor Kimani was, at least from my understanding, is one of the most prolific bean breeders. And you know where he was breeding the beans? If you have ever gone to UN Kabete, kwa hiyo field station, he was breeding. The beans are registered. If you go to the variety list, are registered as Professor Kimani / University of Nairobi. Now, can you give me a timeline? How long you think it will take, and how much work you think it goes into, and how much money you think it goes into to develop a unique, distinct, uniform, and stable variety of a bean?
I'll say 2 years.
Very little. 2 years is very little. It takes an average of 10 years. For beans, I'm giving you a specific example of bean. I was taught by Professor Kimani Waithaka. And this is what he was doing. Apart from teaching, he was breeding. Specifically, he had an interest in beans. And I'm telling you, go to check. Just Google Professor Waithaka beans. You'll see how many bean varieties he has developed. Now, if you go to KEFIS, this is why I'm trying to restore your hope in this country a bit. You have too much trust on M-Pesa, but you don't trust other things. If you go to KEFIS, you can actually ask them, for this variety that was developed by Professor Waithaka, I would like to confirm where he got the parent material from, how the breeding was done, and what characteristics it has that are specific. And then if you find that the varieties registered in the name of Professor Kimani are not actually unique. Come to me, I give you whatever money you want. My point is, I cannot say that the purpose of the law is to protect breeders. The first purpose of the law is to protect, register, keep a list, and protect varieties. Varieties are not breeders. Varieties are accessible to us. So when I register a variety, if I do breeding process and I come up with a variety of maize and I register it, I cannot limit it to my own use. In fact, if I don't do what they call maintaining, you have a responsibility as the breeder to maintain the variety. If I cannot maintain it, I will be asked to give this variety to a company that can maintain it, or to a person that can, an institution that can maintain it.
So I'm trying to summarize your stand on this particular law, and what I'm getting is what the law is trying basically to do is to protect the certification of seeds in the country.
Let me just summarize. You are going to put me in trouble, my friend. And now that I'm starting to study law, I have to be able to be very clear what is said about what I have said. The law protects our agriculture sector. The law protects farmers from unscrupulous business dealers that would be very happy, if that law did not exist, to be selling fake seeds very expensively to farmers. That is number one. So the law protects our agriculture sector. It protects our food security. It protects farmers' livelihoods. Because if a farmer, I've given you an example of a farmer who is sitting on a 2-acre farm. I know them from my village. If they plant the wrong seed, their entire food security for the year is compromised. And you know these kind of farmers. They need to be protected from people who will come from Nairobi, wachukue mahindi, wapake rangi, and these things happen, my friend. Every year, you just go and check ata utafute court records, how many cases people have been arrested for selling fake seed. In fact, this year, there were a number of lorries that were flagged, and the people were arrested this year for trying to distribute fake maize seed. So the law protects food security, it protects farmers, especially smallholder farmers who don't have insurance, okay? And they don't have legal representatives. They don't have lawyers to go to court to challenge companies if they sell them fake seed. Number two, the law protects the varieties by providing a very clear legal mechanism for maintaining a list of varieties. And then number three, now you can say the law protects the rights of breeders of varieties. Because if those rights are not protected, no one will be interested in doing breeding, which means what? We can have all the seeds. But you see, when I want to plant a small plot of managu, I don't want to plant all the diversity in the world. I want to plant a specific type of managu that grows within a specific time period, that also produces flowers at a certain stage, because maybe I don't want it to produce flowers early. I want it to have a specific taste that my client wants. That is what breeding provides. And this is not against organic, it's not against agroecology, it's not against nature. It is actually working with nature, selecting what you want.
Yeah, that's true, and I think that's very clear. And from another, I think as you're saying, as law, you can have like same exact law, but it can be interpreted differently. And I think the way the farmers who took this petition, or the NGOs who took this position, their side of the story is that where is the same energy as they are trying to protect hybrids? Where is the same energy as protecting indigenous seeds? I think that's the question they're asking.
That entire case is a fallacy. I have told you, the 2015 amendment has already created provisions for protection and access and utilization of indigenous whatever plant, farmer managed seed systems. It is already protected in law. The Constitution is very clear on it. Anyone who is doing this business, they're doing it for their own reasons. I have had a debate with all the NGOs. I've had a discussion with all the NGOs that are in this case. I have had a discussion with some of the farmers. Some of them don't even know which law they are talking about. Some of the farmers, they don't know even which law. Okay, could be, and this is not an illegitimate point, could be that maybe based on the discussion and the evidence submitted in court, that the judge might rule in their favor. But I'm asking myself, what will that ruling be? Because if the ruling will be that the law needs to be amended, it's already amended. So are we going to remove again the amendment that is there to put Gary as an institution that manages this? What we need is not a change in law. I would be happy if these efforts that are being wasted on this wild goose chase. And this is my view. They can come to me, they know me, they know where to find me. It's big. I challenge you, bring a Kamukunji, bring those people, let them tell you which part of the law has a problem. If these forces were channeled towards pushing counties, and I have done this before. I did, some time back, I did an advisory to counties on 10-point agroecology agendas that they should include in CIDPs. 2 counties included, but others, we did not manage to get to so many counties. So that counties can invest in building what we call seed banks. This is the only way to create structures and institutions at a very local level for these farmer-managed seed systems to equally thrive. But Brian, if we are thinking of a day where we will have in the same agrovet the same seed merchant, you know, the law, there's a very specific criteria for you to become a seed merchant in law, by the way, so that the same seed merchant is selling you Managu from Simlo and Managu from Atamba. That's an impossibility. You know why? Because very quickly, this packet is changed to this packet. And you see, again, it will make it expensive. It will make seeds from farmers expensive if you bring it to the same market that is unfair in the way it is structured. It is limiting in the way it is structured that a packet of seed, 50-gram packet of seed, becomes too expensive for a farmer to buy. Why are you interested in bringing farmer-managed seed systems into such kind of an unfair market? Why don't you create an alternative market altogether? So wewe umekaa umefungiwa mlango kwa jirani, you are sitting outside there doing what? You can go to another door. You can open another door. And that door is open. And that is why organizations like Seed Savers, they're doing quite a good job. You know, they have an online seed exchange. You see it. Have you ever seen Wajama being arrested? Have you ever seen Seed Savers being arrested? They have a seed bank. And they have an online exchange platform. These are the solutions that are needed, in my view, to advance the space and the opportunity for farmer-managed seed systems. But challenging a law without basis is unfortunately a waste of time.
Okay, yeah, it's quite interesting to say that you see it that way. And I think for me, they do have a legitimate case, especially in the discrimination that is being offered to indigenous seeds. And I think...
Where is the discrimination in the law?
The law needs clarity on ensuring that indigenous seeds are given the same protection as the hybrids are being given.
That's why the amendment is there. And indigenous, in fact, the whatever you call hybrid is not protected by any institution. Okay? The varieties are registered by KEFIS. The cost of maintaining these varieties and the processes, I've told you, it is expensive, my friend. It is expensive to maintain these varieties and to produce certified seed every season. And this is why one of the things I was opposing when they were talking about privatizing Kenya Seed, I was opposed to that because to some extent, even commercial seed are a public good. And that is why I would vouch every day for Kenya Seed to continue to remain owned by the government of Kenya, okay? Because in the event of unstable conditions in the market, Kenya Seed can still supply seed to farmers at a subsidized cost. And this is what they do. They subsidize. Kenya Seed subsidizes the cost of seed. Do you know how much a packet of 2 kg from Kenya Seed is? It is 300 shillings last season, my friend. Yes, it is 300 shillings last season. Now, if you go to other companies, I don't want to mention any other company. If you go to other companies, it is 3 times the price. This is what I'm saying. It is common sense. It is common sense. So you can't tell me that this law is bad. Oh, hii ni mbaya. What is the reality on the ground? Do you think we can sustain our food maize consumption, maize specifically consumption, if we did not have hybrid maize in this country? What ugali did you eat yesterday? You might have eaten your own organic whatever, hiyo unapanda yako ya kala hiyo. Lakini huwezi kula hiyo ugali ya rangi kila siku. Ukienda kwa hoteli hapo utakula nini? Utakula ya white. Trust you me, and if you go to I would also advise people to look at something that I'm really working on trying to get people to be aware about it. You know the KIAMIS, Kenya Integrated Agriculture Management Data Management System. They did this big survey, 7 million farmers across the country. I have 3 farms, all of them were surveyed. This is how I know it is genuine. And it has very clear data. It shows, for example, the reliance on certified seed and uncertified seed is about 50-50.
I think the data says 80% of the seeds that are used in Kenya is indigenous seeds.
No, which data? Now I'm giving you exact data. Wachana na ile sasa. This is what you see. There's a lot of people giving old data and guesswork, yet we have actual survey of farmers. I'm pointing, it is 50-50. It is 50-50. Some 48, it's around 48-52. Now, this split does not discriminate between sizes. Agriculture is scale neutral. I always tell people, there is no technology, unless you are talking about big mechanization or big machinery, that can work in 1 acre, that cannot work in 10 acres and all that. Okay? Agriculture is scale neutral. If it is irrigation, you can apply across. If it is seed, you can apply across. Even smallholder farmers are buying certified seed. And they are buying certified seed not because they don't like their own seed, but because they don't have the luxury to gamble. Because, for example, with maize, if you buy a hybrid maize variety and you plant, and then you see the different colors of tassels. Ingine imetoka white, ingine inakaa pink, ingine, that is a fake seed that they sold you. And what I advise farmers, now KEFIS has been very progressive. They have this SSD, this code, you scratch, keep that packet. We are going to, maybe we'll have a discussion later, another time, and I can bring a few other people to you also to discuss how to know that your seed is fake. We should start suing these companies that are selling fake seed, because they are not only costing you in terms of the seed, they are costing you in terms of productivity, and they are costing farmers in terms of livelihood. So, my friend, there is work to be done. So hii siasa ingine hii wale wanasema sheria, it is not, no, the law is there. It protects farmers from both sides. It protects farmers from companies that are unscrupulous. I can assure you, Brian, bring here any person who is running a commercial seed company and ask them if they like the Seed and Plant Varieties Act. They hate it. You know why? This is a very laborious process of managed certification. Registration first is difficult. Certification, every season they have to pay KEFIS people from Nairobi most of the time. They have to pay their transport, they have to pay their accommodation, they have to pay their per diems to come and just look at their fields and say, this is approved at this stage. My friend, let's be factual. Now, just to complete, recently, Honorable Atamba presented a bill, an amendment bill, which is a clear example of what a bad seed law can look like. I hope he has discarded that thing. It was a very stupid proposal. I hope he has discarded it. And if you look at that proposal that was made by Atamba, he was suggesting that for some seeds, they should not go through the plant variety registration process. They should not go through the DUS process and all that. Which meant that if that bill is ever passed, what it will mean is that exactly what you people are alluding, that now, people just pick seeds, that is exactly what is going to happen. But we are fighting that amendment. It should not go through. We should fight it. It should not go through. Fight it with facts, not emotion. Fight it with facts. Because it is saying, the process of registering a variety, it's in that bill, in the memoranda. It takes about 4 years, which is too long. Too long for who? I want that process to take 5 years. I want it to take 10 years. So that we can confirm Brian has presented a variety of tomato for registration. And by the time it gets to 10 years, we will have known that that variety is not necessarily unique. And we will have told you, please, find something else to do. But you see now, if you try to make it simpler and shorten and all that, then you are creating loopholes. So that is an example of what a bad seed law can look like. The law that we have, my friend, is the best possible legal framework you can have to control seeds. I want to ask people to read the law. Don't follow TikTok. Don't follow Instagram. There are agriculture experts in this country. In fact, there's a friend of mine called Daniel Gitai. Daniel Gitai was coming up with a bill to register agriculture experts. You consult those agriculture officers, consult them. Go and ask them, what does this law say? What can I do that does not contravene the law? And what, By the way, I'm a big proponent of farmer managed seed system. One of my legacy projects at a previous organization I worked with was to start the Indigenous Seed and Food Fair. I'm the one who started that show. And now it's being mismanaged. I've seen posters, they're taking it to Laikipia. That is stupidity of the highest order. That is the biggest seed policy conversation platform that has ever emerged in this country. And the reason why I did the first one at Museum of Kenya is because this is closer to policymakers. This is closer to, the middle class in Nairobi that have the possibilities of talking about these things. You introduce these conversations to people, hata wanaweza ambia rais, wengine wanakutananga na rais. They can tell the president, hey, but hapa imechemka. Now you take that event to Laikipia. They removed me from the WhatsApp group of organizing that thing. They're very stupid people. Now, but I'm just telling you, I also have done my contribution to this space. But what I need to see going forward is let people have factual conversations. Let people have honest reflections. Breeders are not devil worshippers. They are not Satan. They are our friends. They are people who have gone to school. They have studied that. I have friends of mine who are doing their MSc breeding. I have people that have done PhD in breeding. Breeding is not a joke. We have to have credit. We have to even though the government tells us otherwise, shows us otherwise, but we have to trust our own systems. Don't say parliamentarians don't read. Of course, you know, 2027 you can also vie so that you can read. I think I know some members of parliament that are very thorough. We took a petition to, about the pesticide campaign to Parliament. Members of Parliament, there are members of Parliament who are thorough in their job. Forget about the speeches they make in funerals. Interact with members of Parliament in their committees, and you will be surprised. You will be impressed. You will be impressed. So for me, it's a misplaced debate. The law is okay. The law is fine. The law is supportive. And again, I want to emphasize the people that work under that institution called Gary, the board of Gary, the director of Gary should be home so that now we can restructure that institution to address these issues that you are raising and to address these issues that the petitioners are raising in court. These are not law issues, these are policy issues. If the person in Gary is not able to mobilize resources to build seed banks, is not able to engage counties to encourage them to build seed banks, is not able to create even a WhatsApp group of people who run seed banks in the country, what is that person doing about protecting indigenous farmer managed seeds? That person, that is the person that people should ask questions. So you cannot again go to the same to court and say, we don't see that the law exists. The law exists. It's the implementation.
I see your point, and I think the procedural part of it, especially the public participation, is a flawed guess to the law, and also the fact that it's discriminatory to small scale farmers and farmers who grow indigenous seeds. And my part is that as much as it goes to say, hey, if you're being caught, you'll be fined 1 million.
The law fines you if you present seeds purporting to be certified and they are not certified. If you present seeds naming them as varieties that are registered in the variety list and yet they are not the same thing. That is what the law penalizes. It penalizes you for presenting something that is not. But I can assure you, and this we can do it practically one time. You can bring some seeds from your farm, I can bring mine from my farm, and we are going to record a video, and we are going to put it online, and we are going to tag all the institutions, and we are going to tag DCI, and we are going to ask them to come and arrest us, because there is no law that will. The only problem is, if I bring you pumpkin seed, okay? Then I use the name of a variety that is existing in the variety list. That is mistake number one. Then I say, this is pumpkin seed, variety, let's say there's a pumpkin Kisii 122 variety, as in the variety list. If I write that on a packet of seeds that I'm giving you, and yet I am not a licensed distributor of that variety, and there is no verification that this is the same variety that I have written, then I'll be arrested. Number two, if I ascribe qualities that have not been checked by anyone. If I write germination percentage 95%, yield per acre 20 tons, why am I writing this? Who has checked? But farmers don't do that. Farmers, atakwambia, kama I show you, hiyo manenge nataka nikupatie, iko ingine ndio hii na mea hapa, kuja nikuonyeshe. And they take you behind the house and they show you, do you like it? And then you say, hey, I like it. Ama wewe mwenyewe ndio unaona, unamwambia, hey, this malenge is very nice. Do you have some seeds for it? Unamwambia, I have some seeds niliweka. Let me give you some. Okay? Or even when they go to the market, they can still sell in containers that are not labeled. Or they can label it to the extent they can say, this is Ogaro Organic Farm, okay? Managu. But the moment you start saying, superior Managu, 95% germination rate, yield 2 tons per acre, it takes 3 months to mature. Now, hata mimi nitakuuliza, who has confirmed those things? So you are presenting, it's presenting something that has not been checked, that has not been certified. And remember, the same law penalizes. You know the biggest culprits of that clause? It's not even the counterfeit people only. It's also the companies. Forget the breeders. The breeders do the breeding. They go back to do more breeding. The companies that sell the breeds now, that they sell the varieties. Now, if company X goes to establish a plot for seed production, it's called a seed plot in law. Very clear demarcation what a seed plot is, my friend. Then they set up a plot in Kitale that is not approved by KEFIS. They produce seed in their plot. Remember, they are a seed company, big company. Hata wewe ukiona unajua this is a big company. Then they bring the seed, they sell, and then they sell it under the same certification that was given by KEFIS. Then they will be in for the same penalty. So the penalty is not for farmers. The penalty is for anyone dealing with seeds that does not align with that law. But if you give seeds, hata wengine wanasema nauzanga kama chakula. If I sell you groundnuts right now, 20 bags of groundnuts, who knows whether it is seed or food? You see, but the moment I ascribe quality criteria that is only ascribable by the seed regulator, which is KEFIS, then I'm in trouble. And why would I do that?
Yeah, and I don't think there's someone who is opposing that system per se of, hey.
No, but that system is the law that you are opposing.
No, we are not opposing the law. We are saying the law is discriminatory to our indigenous farmers. It's not giving the same leeway, the same provisions, the same.
So you want farmers to be taken through the same rigorous process?
No, I want farmers who have the ability to grow the indigenous seeds be given protection. And the law says clearly, hey, you have the ability to do whatever you want with your seeds. And I think that's why this petition exists. It goes to the courts and tell them, can you direct the lawmakers to do A, B, C, D, and our indigenous farmers and our indigenous seeds cannot be contravened. I think that's a fair proposition to take. And ask the lawmakers, hey, what public participation did you to do your law?
So you would say, even without seeing if there is evidence or not, you would say that the 2015 amendment was passed without public participation. The fact that you were not, the fact that you were not invited, I was also not invited. In 2015, I was a second-year university student. There is a lot of amendments that I have seen. I was not personally invited. But what my responsibility as a citizen, these documents are put out to the public. People are allowed to submit memoranda.
So you think there was public participation that was done?
I can challenge you to tell me, to give me any bill or any policy that has had sufficient public participation in this country. The public participation threshold is insufficient to let's agree, okay? But you cannot argue that there was no public participation at all, unless there is evidence. If that is the argument in court. If that is the argument in court, you know what the government will do? They will provide all the timelines that they provided, all the publications that they made, and all the windows that they provided for people to give feedback. And that will be dead on arrival. I can tell you, if there is something that the government is good at, is showing you that they have done public participation. So, and you know this, even at county level, they will invite people, but the content of the law.
Yeah, the content of the law, as far as protecting the breeders and as far as protecting the integrity of the seeds, is very much recommendable, and it's practiced in international standards. That is recommendable. Nobody's against that. I think from my perspective, we can say that for sure. I want the law to be clear that farmers can exchange their seeds in whichever way they want with their farmers.
Based on what you are asking, the law has done beyond that. It has not only said in a line or in a clause that farmers can exchange. It has even the law has created a specific institution to support farmers, even as they do what you are saying. What else do you want the law to do? The law, you know what you are saying, is a statement change. It can be put as a small clause to say, no. To say that this is what you are saying, that farmers can exchange their seeds and sell their seeds without being arrested. This is what you think is needed. Now, if this is what you needed, my point is, this has been done and it has even been surpassed. Why? Because the law has not only done that, it has set up a whole institution to not only allow farmers, but to support them to do exactly that. So that is why I'm saying this case is baseless. This debate is a waste of time. So the questions that civil society and farmers, genuine farmers, These farmers who are presented, okay, you say how the law has affected you. No, sometimes I am scared. When I exchange seeds, I'm going to be arrested. I told you, I am the one who created the first indigenous seed and food fair event. And I organized it at National Museums of Kenya. And there was government present. And you know what was the most beautiful thing about it? Is that then organizations, especially Pelham, brought farmer groups and they cooked indigenous food at the Museum of Kenya. And they displayed and sold indigenous seeds at the National Museum of Kenya, here in Nairobi. My friend, the problem is, in my view, is the lack of effort, the lack of focus, the lack of investment in trying to see how to enhance the opportunities. I want, when I'm in Eldoret, I've approached seed savers, for example, and they have not allowed me yet, but I will continue to approach them because I want to see if it is possible to set up, even if I can provide space on my farm, to set up a seed bank that is connected to the other seed banks that Seed Savers is running. Okay? But if this is not possible, this should not be something that is run by an individual organization only, but Gary should create a system of exchange across seed banks that occur in the country so that we can invest. People like us who really like to see that farmer seeds are protected, that indigenous seeds are protected. We can have an opportunity to even put in our money if the government does not want to put in our money. Civil society, NGOs, donors can invest money in it, but there should be a framework developed by Gary that says this is how to design a seed bank, this is how to make a seed bank accessible to all communities, this is how to locate a seed bank, this is how to keep the seeds in the seed bank at the highest possible quality. And then a copy of the seeds that appear in the seed banks can then be transferred to Gary for keeping for the country in general. That's the kind of process we should be talking about. But this nonsense of going around, now this law is not, but it's not helpful. Why? Because it's not true. And all the people, I can challenge you to bring them here. All the people who are pushing that narrative out there, if we start talking to them now and ask them where, they will run away from this podcast. They will not explain to you. In fact, the law is so kind that in the allocation of breeders' rights, I want you to go and read the section on breeders' rights under the Seed and Plant Varieties Act. It actually makes a provision for farmers. Breeders' rights essentially are designed to protect the rights of the breeders, the investment of the breeders. And this is a small section in the law. It's not the main purpose of the law. This law was not made by breeders. It was not made by companies, seed companies. This law was made by Kenyans.
Yeah, so to summarize up, you say the law is okay, Gary has failed.
Gary has failed, and the people that are running that institution should be very embarrassed. They have failed because they are the ones that are creating this perception that there is no support. There is support for indigenous seeds in law, and there should be support in terms of policy. For example, the other day there was ASK show in Mombasa. I was just scrolling my Twitter and I saw the chair of Kenya Seed. The current chair of Kenya Seed, Honorable Angui Ngirishi, former women rep for Kirinyaga. And I think she's saying she's going to be the next governor for Kirinyaga. I don't know. But she was there, and she was there side by side with the president in the opening of the ASK show. Okay? Why is she there? Why is the chair of Kenya Seed interested in being in the same tent with the president for such events? So you can lobby for resources. Kenya Seed is still a Kenyan, owned by a Kenyan government. But this director of Gary, where is he mobilizing resources? Who is he talking to? Is he galvanizing even the momentum from civil society, from NGOs to support his institution? Is he looking for money to really make this amendment a reality? I'm not seeing anything. And I'm happy to step in as the director of that institution, even if there is no money. Yes, I can do it part-time. And I can assure you, you will see seed banks being built. You will see indigenous seeds being discussed by counties, because this is also a county thing. You have to bring county money. I was talking another time with the Vihiga governor, and he was asking me, what kind of ideas can I do, because they have launched an agroecology policy. I told him, my friend, the easiest thing you can start by doing, why don't you allocate money as a county to build village seed banks? Within the seed bank, you are creating an environment for people to meet and exchange seeds and talk about agronomic practices and talk about agroecology and talk about organic farming. It is a center that can attract action at a very village level. But the problem that we have in this movement of organic agroecology, we have people who like to talk too much and they do very little. And they like to complain as if they don't know how the system works. The system of public financing requires that whoever is in charge of that mandate does active lobbying, presents this agenda as a top agenda, make sure that it has the eye of the highest office holders, and then there's investments in that. See, mambo ingine sasa, how can I explain beyond what I have explained that the law goes beyond allowing farmers to exchange seeds? It actually establishes an institution that supports farmers as they do that. There's nothing else to explain. I mean, if I go to that case, if I'm allowed to testify in that case, it will be thrown out the same day. I think we have to pay attention to the details. I know it's a motive, people are like, our seeds are under threat. Some of them are just living in apartments. They don't even invest in farming. Some of these people, you know them. You have seen this movement. Even some of the people who talk about agroecology, you tell them, oh, okay, so my friend, so when you go to the village over Christmas, why don't you invite us? We can have chicken there. And others just have 3 chicken. And they say, agroecology is the way. How is it the way with your 3 chicken? Can we be factual and address the issues that are there? Because, the problem, the reason why I am keen on this topic and keen on clarifying and reclarifying and re-explaining is because when we misinform, we misdirect energy, we misdirect priorities, we even misguide actions that can come out. Yeah. So what kind of action do we want to come from the case? What do we want the court to say? Do you want the court to say this law is illegal, it should be done away with and all that? What will be the situation? What situation do we want to create? Do we want the law to say that, what can the court say about it? Really, what can the court say about it? The law is there. The amendment was good. In fact, the 2016 amendment did not talk about breeders' rights and all that. I mean, it might have modified. The beauty about law is that you keep modifying. But the mother law, by the way, has never been repealed. So if someone wants to understand the seed law debate, start from reading the 1972 version. I know it looks old. After you open a document, it smells like an old document, even if you are opening online. But start by reading that. You read that, then you read the amendments. Then you give, there's nothing. And the unfortunate thing is that those people that are fronting that conversation, I have talked to them, all of them, they have nothing to say that is tangible. But they are masquerading out there as if they are a very serious issue, as if this is a very urgent matter, and they are misdirecting the whole country on a very important topic, which they claim to care about. If they cared about this topic, they should have pushed this conversation in the right direction. And we see this a lot. When we were doing the pesticides campaign, others came and say, now it's a complete ban. No. And they derailed our movement like that. Jumping into a conversation, we were saying ban those ones that are banned in Europe as a beginning of a conversation. I don't believe that you can have a complete pesticide ban. I don't think that pesticide companies are necessarily evil and they're here to give people cancer. That kind of narrative, there's no place for it. Promoting organic and promoting agroecology does not mean just saying anything that favors you. You also have to be factual. So if I appear somewhere and I say, all pesticides are bad, my friend, sometimes you need pesticides.
Yeah, I think that's a very important topic. I think we'll create time and have a conversation about it some other time. So I think your position in this law is very clear. Something I would like to touch on, you mentioned about the breeders' rights and like their entitlement. And I think we know there's a lot of work that goes into doing the breeding itself. And the question I ask myself is always, to what extent should they get credit? The genes that they are using is not theirs. This is something they found freely in nature. Yes, there's a lot of work that goes into identifying the specific genome that you need to be interbred or you need to transfer to a certain maize. We appreciate that work. And I think my quibble with it is how long, like the extent to which they get the rights to use those seeds. They say like it's 20 years. And I think it should be like at most 5 years, and then anybody can be able to use those seeds. And the other thing is about the argument that can be made is that the reason why this law exists is, of course, the multinationals who breed these seeds, the Bayers who are in the country. These laws is pushed by them, and those high standards are actually being promoted by them to keep off the competition to be able to breed those seeds. And I think that's a very legitimate argument to make because, one, they have the resources, they have the expertise, they have the know-how to go through all those loopholes to get their seeds in the front of the line rather than, let's say, we have some breeder in Egerton who's trying to come up with their own seeds to get the necessary approvals for those seeds to be grown by farmers. So I think those loopholes are there systematically by the big boys to get the small guys not to get involved in the breeding part.
So let's come back to our context. I have told you the group you are referring to as breeders in the context of Kenya are actually mostly government researchers and our universities. So if Calro is owning breeding rights of, let me give you a variety that I know because I worked with Calro to do some process. I was trying to support some women groups in Masaini, in Kajiado, to do commercial rangeland grasses. Okay? So Calro has a variety of Eragrotis superba, Masai love grass, that they have registered as Calro. The breeder behind it, I will not mention her name, maybe she does not want to be associated, but it's actually, she was doing it for her PhD. She was doing it under Calro Kiboko Station. And through her PhD, her research on isolating rangeland grass. Can you imagine the process of isolating grasses until you come to a point where you have a specific type that is uniform and stable? You can imagine it's a lot of work. So I want people to appreciate this when they are, and it's not that we don't have expertise. No, we have a lot of expertise in this country. We just underrate our experts and allow people who talk the loudest to talk. I was a class representative at University of Nairobi and representing the entire faculty of agriculture at some point. And at the years when I was at UN, that group, our group only, was over 750 young women and men studying BSc agriculture, BSc horticulture, BSc food science, BSc. So I would never say anywhere that we don't have expertise on the topic of food. The problem is, now, sasa wengine wana misdirect conversations. If you brought here someone who has done a basic course on breeding, they will not have an indictment, they will not indict breed because they know. Now, if your point is that they get too much, so in this case, in the Kenyan context, it is us who are getting too much. Because it is our institutions that have the breeders' rights for most of the varieties registered. It is our universities that have the breeders' rights for most of the varieties registered. So I would not even look at it as a completely commercial space. It is research and breeding for public good in the Kenyan context, largely. Multinationals have nothing to do with this. I can assure you, I've been in conversations with these people, I know. The reason why we have laws, why do we have the Public Health Act? Why do we have National Transport and Safety Authority Act? Is it because of multinationals? Is it because of Mercedes or Toyota or Honda? No, we have these laws because they are protecting us. If we did not have National Transport and Safety Authority Act, we would not have NTSA. You would not get your driving license. There will be no laws to discuss cases of accidents because now we are Liligonga na nyuma, but I think I like the guy who hit the guy from behind, so I think there is no way, okay, where do you utalipa? No, you need laws. Agriculture sector is actually under-regulated. The Kenyan agriculture sector is under-regulated as it is. There are things we have not regulated properly, like food safety. And that's why the other time there was a food and feed safety bill, and people were making noise. They say, now Ruto has decided to kill all farmers so that he is the only one who can be supplying food. That is, I don't want to use the very colorful language, but that is the most stupid thing ever. You know what that bill was proposing? It was basically proposing for a mechanism for counties, number one, to do annual reports on status of food and feed safety, right? Number two, for the agencies that have a different stake on food and food safety to also report annually, so that at the end of the year, we have a good overview of the status of food and feed safety. You are a farmer yourself. You have 200 chicken. Wenda uchukue chakula yenye iko na high levels of aflatoxin. You feed your chicken, they all die. There is nothing that protects you. Do you know that? Yeah. Do you know we don't have a law on production of feeds and standards of feeds? Do you know we don't have that? The people who are doing good quality feeds, including my friends from Value Farm in Eldoret who sell to me, they are doing it out of goodwill. There is no law that actually It regulates that, now if I buy, let's say I am feeding pigs. I do a lot of pig farming. Now, if I'm feeding over a period of 1 month, I need to see this amount of weight change. I don't have any institution I can go and say, this guy sold me chakula ya nguruwe worth 200,000 and I was feeding my 60 piglets and I did not see the weight gain that was promised. And even the bags they sell to me now, there's no clarity on what is the ingredient and all. So we are under-regulated, and we need regulations to advance our food system transformation. We need regulations even for agroecology. There is no law today, Brian, and I'm working now with Vihiga to develop an agroecology law for Vihiga. And one of the things that Honorable Maruja, who is the CC, I was there this week actually on Tuesday, he asked me, what would an agroecology bill or an agroecology act in the county of Vihiga cure? Big question. You don't create law for the fun of it. Yeah. So, and one of the things I can tell you for a fact, there is no law that puts a responsibility on your neighbor to agree to sit with you to address something that is affecting both your farms. Yeah. Let's say there is water. I have a big problem in one of my farms. Water flows from one direction, ikipita. There is no provision in law, even county laws, that will push me and my neighbors to agree to a sit down, to agree to a solution that addresses the problem for everyone. So we cannot do landscape level interventions because no law pushes you. You go to your neighbor unamwambia hii maji inapitia hapa kwako, so uchimbe kakitu hapa kidogo so that you can redirect it. Anakuambia hii shamba yangu. It is kind of nonsense that we are dealing with. So farmers are struggling because there is no law that prohibits. People know eucalyptus is terrible when you're doing with crops. There is no law in this country currently, that especially implemented at county level, that clearly demarcates where you can plant eucalyptus. Wanasema tu uko weka kwa maji huko usiweke na usiweke. It is a policy statement. There is no legal provision for you to take your neighbor to court if they do something that affects your farm. So anyway, back to your point. I would not say multinationals are controlling our laws. We are so busy imagining that multinationals are controlling our food while we are losing control of the same food. We are so busy thinking that Bill Gates is going to determine what I'm going to eat next year while I'm forgetting to do my part.
He is to a certain huge extent.
Bill Gates will never determine what I eat.
Without Bill Gates, there won't be GMOs in this country.
However much money he has, no. In fact, even if, I can assure you, Brian, listen, I can assure you, even if Bill Gates was never born, assume Bill Gates was never on this planet, GMOs will still be there.
They will, but they will not be in this rate in Kenya.
No. Do you know how many people have studied biotechnology? I did at UN, I did biotechnology 1, biotechnology 2. But there are people who have studied Bachelor of Science, biotechnology. Do you know how many thousands of graduates we have who have studied biotechnology? Nothing stops them from using the knowledge they have to come up with genetically modified organisms. It's only the money. Okay? My argument is, when you look at our landscape and when you look at our laws, don't look at them as if they are alien to us. These are our laws.
And I think personally, it's fair to say there's a huge influence that certain
international treaties.
Exactly. And my problem with that is we have certain laws in the country that come here without tweaking into our local context. So, for example, the thing about subsidies, something that has been copied from Europe, from the Americas, of what governments are doing to their farmers, and it's being transported here without having... It's a political... That's what I'm saying. When we are introducing laws, we need to make it make sense into our local context.
But there is no fertilizer subsidy law. And that is why the fertilizer program is tweaked all the time, depending on the political interest of who is on the seat. But again, we are the ones who elect these people. So, but I would agree with the current government with the way they started before. They said, don't subsidize consumption, subsidize production. Would you not agree with that?
Yeah, I wouldn't agree with that.
So like what the other government was doing is to subsidize unga. Instead of subsidizing production, what
I would say remove all subsidies.
No, you cannot remove all subsidies.
Yeah, I know that's a political quagmire, but I'm very non-political. So Subsidies is what they were basically saying. I'm going to take taxpayers' money and I'm going to put it into a specific sector of the economy.
We can agree on the unfortunate thing is that politicians decide where to put the money. I would not agree that it's the best investment to invest in fertilizer subsidies, but I would agree with Ruto. It is even a worse investment to invest in unga subsidy. So let's now, but I don't feel compelled to believe that all these laws and all these things are being controlled externally. International treaties are there for a reason. Kenya is part of an international community, and that is why we have the UN. These multilateral agencies. They serve a purpose. That is why we have codex, for example, for food safety. It's an internationally agreed standard, and that is what informs us on also how we develop our food safety laws and our food safety standards. Because today, if you travel to Kampala, you're going to pop in a hotel and you're going to eat. The reason why you have that kind of trust is because Uganda is implementing the same standards of food safety as Kenya. Why? Because of an international codex treaty. I agree with you that sometimes it's not practical to implement such kind of laws, but there are laws. Laws are there to be implemented, but there are contexts. For example, if you are talking of vendors, there's a lot of work I'm doing on informal vendors. If you are looking at a vendor, mwenye kibanda yake tayari iko juu ya maji ya sewage, one of the key things around codex is to make sure that you are putting up a food production or selling area on an environment that is clean. Sasa huyo vendor wa Mathare atatoa wapi clean environment? Venda wako Mukuru atatoa wapi clean environment? Hakuna mahali sewage na hakuna sewage system and all those things. Those are complexities that are there in different, but it does not mean that international treaties are colonizing us. I would not agree with that. International treaties are in fact our go-to when we cannot solve things internally. The International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources, for example, has a big bearing on the constitutional provision that we are talking about. It has a big bearing on pushing the government because of the International Treaty on Genetic Resources, that now has a big bearing on pushing the government to even create institutions for that. So I would say it always comes like this. So Kenya, if you go to a Kenyan laws under Article 2, by the way, by virtue of ascending, all international treaties become law, even if we don't have laws specifically on them. Article 2, I think it's Article 2(1)(a) of the Constitution. All international laws become law by ascending. And that is why things like right to food, for example, they are law because of International Covenant on Economic and Social Cultural Rights. Is that Bill Gates? Is that the international community is our community. We are part of international community. So I would not have any kind of bad words to say, this is, Europe colonizing us. No one will colonize you. You will colonize yourself in your mind. If you think that someone is going to hit you and they're not interested in hitting you, you are going to run away for no reason. So stop running. Stop running. Why can't we be confident about the expertise that we have? I told you, for example, when you say, others have expertise to do genetic modification. No, Kenyans have expertise to do genetic modification. I don't agree with GMOs, but I would not say that Americans or Europeans have a bigger advantage. Maybe the only advantage they have is equipment and all that. But in terms of expertise, we have expertise. Let us not discredit our own people. So we have expertise to do anything that we decide as a people we want to do. But we are shielding ourselves by saying, that is foreign, that is foreign. And we are treating with foreign phones. We are using now, people are setting up internet from foreign suppliers. We are wearing watches from foreign suppliers. Why are you not scared that that watch will explode and break your arm? Yeah. Why do you trust to put a phone made in China in your pocket? Why? So we are part of an international community. The point is we allow what comes in, and we need to now find ways of dealing with what we allow to come in. So even in food systems, I would say we cannot run away from international law. We cannot run away from international conventions relevant to food, relevant to climate. We have to be part of that. What we do as individuals, and my main biggest problem is these issues of misinformation and all that. You saw what happens with the vaccine. So was it true that Bill Gates was bringing vaccines to kill our cows?
Huge part, yes.
I would, how many cows have died so far?
Did they go ahead with the exercise?
No, the vaccination continued. How many cows have died? It continued, my friend.
I mean, were you expecting them to die immediately? I mean, what was...
So what is the time frame for them to die?
We'll have to wait. Same with COVID. We had a big argument about...
But you got the vaccine yourself.
I never got the vaccine.
You never got the vaccine. So you think you are a superior human being?
Blood is very much pure. Pure. So here is the point. As we finish here...
Utafariki too.
Yeah, we all die one day.
But not from COVID vaccine. Yeah. I got 3 shots, by the way. Not because I wanted, but because I needed when I was traveling. But I don't think I'm going to die because I got a COVID vaccine. I think that is another conspiracy. Yeah. But anyway.
That's fair. So as we finish, there's someone who is watching us, like, who are in Nairobi. Maybe they don't have a lot of interest in seeds. What should they do to maybe get involved with seeds, or like they can start maybe saving seeds? Like, what advice could you give to someone who is watching and they don't interact with seeds in their day-to-day lives?
I think food issues are your issues. You know, like everyone eats all the time. So make sure that you pay attention to the discussions that are going on. We have a very good debate on how to transform our food systems as a country. But unfortunately, as is with many debates, it is infiltrated with a lot of misinformation and a lot of crap is in the conversation, together with good discussions in the conversation. So I think it is the responsibility of every consumer, to really make sure that they are informed, that they second guess. Second guessing does not mean that you think the other person is not smart enough. You know, it means that there is a margin of error. You know that even what I'm saying might not be 100% correct, but 99.9999999%, because I pay attention to these details. But the most important thing is to find the information yourself. So when there's a big debate like the seed debate, find the information. Yeah, you consult Google, find the information. This, by the way, anything to do with law, when you see big headlines by these very unscrupulous bloggers that would just put something, say, now we are in a big situation. In fact, all farmers are going to be jailed. And then, no, where you get it as an area that invites you to exploit. Now, but get more information. Go and find that new law that is being mentioned. Read it. It takes you, and this I've done by practice, it takes you less than 1 hour to get a good overview of what is contained in a bill. So anytime you hear people talking about, and bills are written in the most simple, plain language. Laws are written very plainly. There's no grammar and all that. I think the time of Kinaorengo drafting these bills is over. The people who are doing it now, they're doing very simple, because laws have to be understood. That's the basic point. So anyone has to understand the law. So even you can understand the law. So you read it. Understand what it says. There is no cause for alarm from where I sit. There is technology coming into food. Some of the technology is helping us to produce food in a more efficient way. Unfortunately, some of the technologies that are being proposed are contravening with our basic culture and the basic ideas. If you find something that does not work for you, if you think that putting eggs in an incubator, for example, is not good because the chicken, the hen needs to sit on eggs, that's your business. You decide, wekea kuku nini mayai kwa besheni ikalie. Ikikalia mayai 10, iague 3, live with that, you know. But technology has its place in food systems. I think it's agroecological to work with technologies like incubators. AI is a technology that is relevant, that people should interact with. It's not evil, the way people try to present it. Breeding is a very simple in the sense of what it solves, not in the sense of how complicated it is, but in the sense of what it solves, to help us to really just pick the desired characteristics. Not meaning that you are throwing the others. You have to maintain them. But for this year, I want maize for roasting. I'll come to you to get the very sweet indigenous maize. But if I want maize for ugali, I want white ugali. If I give my kids ugali that is looking otherwise, they will say, "Hii ni ugali gani?" You know. So I would just say, pay attention, take interest, don't panic. I think the biggest problem is panicking. When you read a big headline, you panic. Don't panic. things are under control. We are there to collectively make sure that whatever happens in the best interest of ourselves, of our future generations. Yeah, I think that's what I can say. You don't have to farm yourself. Farming is difficult. It's not for everyone. Don't farm if you don't have a lot of money.
But then what has been? You have a farm. When did you start the farm?
Hey, it's a long story. I was given land when I was 14 after the unfortunate event of my father passing. So some things come with positive things. I got some land from my father, inherited. So I started planning my farm when I was 14, basically. And by 16, I was planting some trees and all that. But I did not do it intensively in terms of because I didn't have a lot of resources to do that. I think I would say I have invested in farms, because now my model is to do small farms. So I set up small farms and make them operational, put in irrigation equipment and all that, and then I hire 2 people per farm to run the farm. I like it. I think now I'm breaking even, I can say. I'm not making a lot of money, which is fine. I don't need to make a lot of money now because I still keep investing. So, yeah. But I think for the last maybe 6 years, I have invested heavily in agriculture, and I would say it's not for faint-hearted. There's a difference between kiwanja. What I was given is a kiwanja. It's a field. There's a difference between a field and a farm. If someone gives me a 10-acre field and a 2-acre farm, I'll go for a 2-acre farm. A farm has systems. You have water, you have housing, you have farm structures, you have all those things. It will take you a lot of money to convert a field into a farm. So don't gamble. You can invest in other businesses that have better possibilities. And when you are ready, if you think you have possibilities, then now you can get into farming. But we also have a lot of technology these days. I can see my farms from my phone. I have CCTV cameras. I can see. I also work with competent people. My workers, submit reports in English. We have a WhatsApp group, my wife and my workers, and we work together as a team. So, if you have this kind of farm where you want to hire people who are not competent, and sometimes people even hire people who are struggling, having different challenges in the farm because they're cheaper. This is not the point. The beauty is a farm supports a lot of people. Since I started working on my farm, I support a lot of people in terms of income. When I want to dig a fish pond, I bring in 10 people to dig by hand for around 2 weeks, and these 10 people have a job for 2 weeks, for example. And sometimes they would be the ones coming to suggest when they see me passing, they say, "Hey, Wana, stop. We have not done something for a long time. Why can't we do the other fish pond?" And then I say, "Let me check my account," and then So I see more of community in farming. I see my farms as a space for me to spend time with neighbors, with friends, and with my family, other than just producing income. And this is also partly because I'm a bit privileged. I have other income sources. But I know there is some technicalities that you can do now to tweak even that luxury of just having a farm that is operational and is able to pay staff and just keep you something small for fuel. You can turn the volume up. By using incubators, raising, the thing that I want to do. I want to go into proper dairy. I'm going to use milking machines. I don't know if they are organic.
Yeah, it's organic.
They are organic. Someone told me they are not organic. You have to milk organically. I want to do a lot of egg production. If I want to convert the farm into, so I need to build structures for 5,000 chicken. And then I can, I'm growing azola also, so I can supplement the commercial feeds with. But this is a different conversation altogether. But the most important thing, I think I have partly been part of the people who have been saying, go and farm. I've never said there's money in farming because I know there's no money in farming. My introduction course at UAN by Professor Waidaka, he said, if you want to make 2 million shillings from farming, 1 million shillings from farming, you start with the 2 million. You will definitely end up at 1 million because you lose a lot of money in farming sometimes. I think not everyone has the privilege to have a space to farm. If you have a piece of land, don't keep it idle. You are one of the people, and I will say it directly, you are one of the people that are causing us problems. Do not leave any piece of land that is productive idle. Give it to someone else who can use it. If you know you have a piece of land you inherited from your grandfather, your great-great-grandfather, or you stole from someone, make sure that you use it. If you don't want to use it, please pass it to someone who can use it. We need to put all our land in sustainable production so that we can feed ourselves. But if you don't have land, no pressure. Eat what you get. Eat organic when you have money. When you go broke, come back to our common markets. Chakula iko.
Yeah, and just try to have like a connection, or like try to have like people who you can call. Hey, ukona skuma.
And you can invest with others. If you have a friend who is working on a farm, you can sit together if you trust each other, and say, instead of the person taking 5 years to build a pig farm, you can invest together so that it takes a shorter time. I would really, especially young people, I would encourage them. Wale wako na shamba, they work together with others to invest. I've tried to talk to my friends. They are waiting for me to make a lot of money so that they can come to invest, and there will be no space to invest, unfortunately. So, yeah, but if you don't have access, you can still engage. When people talk about climate change, when people talk about food, when people talk about seeds, find this information, engage with it. I think this is the responsibility of everyone to be aware of what is going on. And when we are all aware, then we can really make sure that we are having conversations that are factual, that are sober, and we can deal with the misinformation like this case that is in Machakos.
All right. Yeah, I think you've shared a lot of information that I think people will find very, very insightful, especially in the areas of seeds. There's so many things we could have talked about, but yeah, this area, I think you've made very clear, and you've given your opinion on what you think is and what needs to be done. For some people who want to follow your work, like, where can they find you on social media? Maybe you can also share your email.
I don't have a specific point where I put all my content, but I've discussed a lot of issues on GMOs, on seeds, and all that. I think I'm not advising them to go away from your channel after they finish watching everything that is on this channel. They can now just search Emmanuel Atamba. You can see the kind of debate, the kind of works that we have done. I think there's a lot of content on YouTube on the work that I have engaged myself in. I'm doing a lot of work on school meals. You should invite me next time to talk about school meals specifically. This is another area where there's a lot of issues to discuss. School meals, working with informal vendors, working with informality for food systems transformation, recognizing the positive aspects of informality and trying to see. And I also... Yeah, I'm more active on LinkedIn these days than on X. I think since it was bought by the richest person on the planet, I avoided it. I don't know. I think I cannot stand the fact that I am basically using a platform for public communication that is being managed by one man, being owned by one man. I think it's it's difficult for me to, but maybe I'll go back to it. I don't know. But I think I interact more on LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. For those that are working on agriculture issues, I think this is where I also share if there's opportunities to work together, things like this. If there's events, this is where I share.
Yeah, I think that one is very clear. And thank you very much for making time for the podcast. And I think I'm looking forward to maybe having you again in the podcast to discuss other issues as well. So I'm pretty sure you will enjoy this podcast. Till the next podcast, remember to be organic. Cheers.